Welcome on into Green Couch Chats with Miss Miami. I'm your host, Mary Luce Cook. Today I'm joined by Nya Jones, founder and CEO of the Inside the Out brand, as well as the creator of the Better Everyday Journal. Nya is a recent graduate of Johns Hopkins University with a degree in economics and public health. In our conversation, Nya shares with me the importance that journaling has had in her own mental health journey, as well as her self-development journey, and the role that it can play in yours as well. She has a bunch of tips for self-care and creating space for your own mental health care journey. Nya, at what point did you realize that Inside and Out was something that could impact the world and not just yourself?
Yeah. So it really started with just me. I was on a personal self-development journey last year, soon after I graduated from college. It was COVID, so it wasn't my normal like summer break, and I had a few more months before starting work full time. And I really wanted to just spend that time like for myself and being more intentional in consuming positive content. And I really started with just like a list of questions that I wanted to answer for myself. So it was like a list of journal prompts. And I was also doing some research to see if there was like anything similar to what I was looking for out there. And I couldn't really find what I was looking for. So I kind of made the decision to just like create it for myself. And I realized that it could be helpful to a lot of other people. And I think thus far it has been. So that just makes me so happy.
I love what you mentioned, consuming positive content in your personal development journey. So important.
Yes.
Like food that we put into our body, right? Like that's important, and what we put into our brains is so important too. So
Yeah,
you mentioned that. Now,
absolutely.
yeah. So when it comes to your own personal mental health and your personal development journey, how transformational was journaling for you?
Yeah, I would say super transformational. I mean, I've been journaling for a long time, like since I was a young age, and I've actually been someone who's always had a difficult time opening up to others. So I always use journaling as like a way to release my thoughts and emotions onto paper. But I think more recently, I wanted to approach journaling in a way that was more like consistent and not necessarily just reactive. I didn't want to only journal when it's like I'm going through a really tough time or I'm hitting rock bottom and I just like need to get all these feelings onto paper. But also, I wanted to create more of like a consistent practice in which like I'm constantly reflecting and constantly just trying to be the best version of myself. So I think journaling has been so great in my self-development journey and also my mental health journey because it's also about intentionally like creating a space for yourself and only yourself.
That word intentional is so
Yeah.
important. How does Inside Then Out help your people create that intentionality when it comes to journaling? Can you explain
Yeah.
how it's structured?
Yeah. So I actually have the journal here in case anyone wants to see it. It's called the Better Everyday Journal. And it's like a daily guided journal. So each day there's a designated journal prompt. And it actually has like different themes. So it takes you along kind of like a journey. Like it starts with self awareness and understanding your past, love, relationships, like so many different topics that I think is so important in your life. And I think what I wanted to create with this journal was a way to just intentionally take that time every day, whether it's like 5 to 10 minutes, and just kind of reflect. Because I think a lot of times, like in our day to day lives, it can be really reactive and it can feel very repetitive too. But we also have a choice like every day to kind of be the best version of yourself. So that's why I titled it Better Every Day too, because I wanted it to be a way in which like someone can constantly create that space for personal development and growth.
I love that. Now, as someone who is so busy, you have a full-time job, you're a business owner, and I'm sure a
Yeah.
million other things. As long as I've known you, you've just been doing everything. Um, so how do you intentionally create that time for yourself to prioritize yourself?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, like it's definitely been hard. I tend to have very like high standards for myself, as you've probably seen over the years. But I think what's really important is just like designating that space for yourself. So something that's like really important to me is like my morning and nighttime routines. Like I try to disconnect from social media and spend like the first few hours of the day, whether that's like journaling, stretching, meditating, just creating that space for myself. And then the same thing at night is going to be like reading, lighting a candle, listening to music, just creating that space. Because what I've realized with myself is a lot of my best ideas come when I'm resting. And I think like there's such power in being able to prioritize yourself, and you'll realize like how much more successful and productive you can even be when you create those spaces for yourself.
Ooh, Nya, I have goosebumps. That's so good. Yeah, you have to. We have to be intentional, and we have to create,
Yeah.
just like you're saying, create that space for ourselves. We can't just wait for, this wonderful mental health journey to stumble upon us. We have to be
Yeah,
intentional about it. So,
exactly.
for those who may be new to journaling or are just starting a personal development journey and realizing that this is something that is important to them, what advice do you have for them? Because it can be pretty intimidating.
Yeah, I think in terms of approaching journaling, it can be very daunting, especially if you're just starting out. But there is some amazing resources out there. Like I remember even in the beginning, I would look up journal prompts and think questions that I wanted to answer, or you can get a guided journal. There's just so many resources, but it's also about just like creating that space for yourself and allowing yourself to just like, it's not something that needs to be perfect. When you approach journaling, it's really your space to write out what you're feeling. So whether it's like using a guided journal or it's just like you just blurting out whatever feelings you have on paper, there's no right or wrong way to do it. And that's what I always like to encourage. And I think even when I was creating this journal, I wanted it to be for people at all spectrums of journaling or even their personal development journey, because I wanted somebody who say maybe has never journaled before to be able to come and have like a guided way of approaching journaling on a daily basis, but also maybe people who have been journaling for years and feel like they're experts to also start to ask themselves those deeper questions and really unpack some of their daily thoughts and actions and really just create that space for deep reflection. So
I think that's so freeing what you said, that there's no perfect way to journal. I think
yeah.
that's so good, and everyone has different ways of thinking and doing things, and so that's super freeing and great advice. Now, when it comes to creating your journal, first of all, please tell us how long it took you to create your journal and what that process looks like, because it was really cool talking to you about that.
Yeah, so it was pretty quick for me because I was very lucky. I was in a stage like I had just graduated from college and I hadn't started full-time work yet. So I had a few months. This was my summer break of last year. And within like a couple months, I like finished the journal content and then also started creating the journal itself in my business. So it was like 2 to 3 months.
So cool that you were able to do
Yeah.
that in that span of time. And then when it comes to creating that journal, creating those prompts and those themes, when you look at it, is there a favorite theme or prompt that you have in there?
Yeah, it's really hard to pick one. Obviously, because I created it, so I tried to be very intentional in the themes and the prompts that I chose. But a few recent ones I've really enjoyed was one like write a letter to someone who hurt you. I think that question. It's funny because like I go along with the journal now, but like even though I wrote it, it still like catches me off guard sometimes. But yeah, I think that one really just like causes you to just like take a step back and like reflect on past pain and trauma. And it's kind of like getting those thoughts onto paper because a lot of times we don't really realize the effect of other people on our lives or past experiences. So that one kind of had me in my feelings a little bit. And then another one, I think this was like a few days ago, was like what do you feel when you look in the mirror, and that question was really like at the root of like self-love and just reflection. So that question was also like super meaningful for me. But yeah, I can't pick one that's my favorite, but those are like some recent ones that have definitely made me think.
Those are so good. Now, when it comes to those who want to purchase your journal, where can they do that? Where can they keep up with you?
Yeah, so you can check us out on my website, which is www.insidethenout.com, or on our Instagram page is at Inside Then Out.
Awesome. And then, Nya, one last question for you. If you had to share one piece of mental health advice with the world, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it would be really just creating that space for mental health. I think we always think about, training our or taking care of our physical health. We will go to the gym or we'll try to eat healthy, but I think a lot of times we can neglect our mental health. So it's really about creating that space for yourself, whether that's through journaling or self-care or therapy. I think you need to choose to focus and prioritize your mental health. I think therapy is something I'm always an advocate for. I think it allows you to unpack, even like, I think a lot of people think there's this stigma that, oh, you need to be at rock bottom to go to therapy, but it's so great to be able to just talk to somebody about your past experiences and how that influences you today, because it's deep work. Like, working through your mental health is deep work, and we're like accumulation of years and years of being on this earth and external influences from other people. So I think just taking the time to really unpack that for yourself is so healing, and it allows you to be such a better person.
Yeah, Naya, that's so good. And I totally want to echo what you said about therapy and like there being a stigma around it. Like you don't have to be
Yeah.
at rock bottom to go to therapy. You
Yeah.
can do that work now, when you're in a better place or whatever it is. I mean, just to understand your past and why you are the way
Yeah.
you are, like that's so important. So,
Right. And your future partners, your children will thank you for
yeah.
doing this deep work now.
Yes,
Okay.
they will. That is
Like
so true. So, so true. And it's just interesting. Like, I mean, everything is kind of intertwined, whether it's your relationships with your coworkers, your family members, your personal relationships, all that stuff is affected just by, all those things from the way that you grew up and those external influences. So,
exactly.
yeah, oh my goodness. That's really, really good advice. And, that's a big goal of Green Couch Chats here is to destigmatize mental health and, have
Awesome.
these best practices so that we can be intentional about taking care of
Yeah.
ourselves. So, Naya, thank you so much for your time. You are just such an impressive woman. You always have been for as long as I've known you. So,
Oh,
thank you so
thank you so
much.
much for having me. It's been a pleasure.